Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of how London's famous fog turned into a literal killer. Yep, we're talking about December 1952, when a familiar part of the city's identity suddenly became its greatest threat. So how did this happen?
To really get what was going on, let's start with this memory from a child. Imagine being a kid, and the simple act of breathing leaves a black, sooty stain on your scarf. And the crazy part? This wasn't an emergency, it was just normal. That right there captures the terrifying reality. The poison was already just part of daily life.
And that idea of an everyday poison brings us right into our first section. We're going to explore how London's most famous feature, its fog, was actually a monster hiding in plain sight.
You know, for centuries, the city's fog was so legendary, it had its own nicknames. People called it a London particular or a pea super. It was the moody, mysterious backdrop for stories like Sherlock Holmes. It really was a core part of the city's brand.
But that's where the problem started. This cultural acceptance created a massive blind spot. Nobody was alarmed by a thick fog because, well, it was just another Tuesday in London. Health officials had seen a million pea supers before, so when this one rolled in, they didn't see a crisis, they just saw the weather.
But here is the absolute crucial distinction. This wasn't just fog. It was smog, a toxic chemical soup. All that sulfur from cheap coal was mixing with the water vapor in the air, creating tiny little droplets of sulfuric acid. People weren't just breathing in damp air, they were inhaling a corrosive acid.
So, how on earth did things get so bad? Well, in our next section, we're going to break down the unique combination of factors, a true perfect storm, that set the stage for a citywide catastrophe.
Okay, so 3 key ingredients came together with just devastating precision. First, it was bitterly cold, so everyone was burning way more coal just to stay warm. Second, because of post-war economics, all the good quality coal was being exported. That left Londoners with the cheap, nasty, high-sulfur stuff. And third, this rare weather event, an anticyclone, basically put a giant lid of warm air over the city, trapping all that pollution right on top of them.
And under this atmospheric lid, London became a huge chemical factory. I mean, just look at these numbers. Every single day, the city was pumping 1,000 tons of smoke and 370 tons of sulfur dioxide into what was basically a sealed box. And that sulfur dioxide? It then transformed into 800 tons of pure sulfuric acid just hanging in the air. Insane.
To really put the scale of this into perspective, the peak level of smoke in the air was nearly 300 times higher than what the World Health Organization considers safe today. It was an almost unimaginable level of toxicity. This toxic brew led directly to 5 days of just absolute chaos, a time when the City of London literally went blind. Let's dive into this descent in our third section.
It all started on Friday, December 5th, with what everyone thought was just a normal fog. But by Saturday, the sun was completely gone. By Sunday, the smog was seeping inside buildings, and by Monday, the city's health services were just collapsing. It was a terrifyingly fast spiral from a simple inconvenience into a full-blown crisis.
The darkness was just profound. It was completely disorienting. This quote really says it all. The simple act of walking down the street became a blind gamble. Can you imagine a world so dark you literally cannot see your own feet?
And this just shows how extreme it was. In one part of the city, the Isle of Dogs, the official visibility was recorded as nil. 0. Not a few meters, not a few feet, absolutely nothing.
The smog brought London completely to its knees. Transport was paralyzed, cinemas had to close because nobody could see the screen. The health system buckled. In one absolutely horrific case, an ambulance got lost and its patients and driver actually died inside. And soon, the first people to really grasp the scale of the death toll were the undertakers, who simply ran out of coffins.
When the smog finally cleared on December 9th, the immediate horror was over. But the grim task of figuring out the true cost, well, that was just beginning.
The first official estimate was already horrifying: 4,000 excess deaths. To put that into perspective for you, that was more civilian casualties than in any single event of the Blitz during World War II.
But here's the thing. Death rates stayed unusually high for months. The government at first tried to downplay it, blaming the lingering deaths on a bad flu epidemic. But was that really the truth?
Nope, it wasn't. Decades later, scientists did a deep dive into the mortality records and proved the flu couldn't possibly account for the massive, prolonged spike in deaths. The true toll of the Great Smog was a staggering 12,000 people. It's one of history's deadliest environmental disasters, period.
But this absolute catastrophe ended up being a catalyst for change. It sparked a revolution in public health and environmental law, leaving a legacy that continues to shape our world today.
The sheer scale of the tragedy and the public outrage that followed forced a very reluctant government to finally do something. All that pressure led to the creation of something called the Beaver Committee and ultimately the landmark Clean Air Act of 1956.
Now this was truly pioneering legislation. It gave local authorities the power to ban dirty fuels in cities, and for the very first time, it established that the government has a fundamental responsibility to regulate pollution to protect public health. It totally changed Britain's air.
But here's the key lesson for us today. While those infamous pea supers are gone, the battle isn't over, not even close. The killer has simply changed its form. The visible killer of 1952, that thick coal smoke, has been replaced by the invisible killer of today, microscopic particles and nitrogen oxides from traffic that still contribute to thousands of premature deaths.
And that leaves us with a final crucial thought. The great lesson from 1952 is that the deadliest threats are so often the ones we get used to, or even worse, the ones we can't see at all. The killer is still in the air. The real question is, are we paying enough attention this time around?
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.